Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
It's been a little bit of time since we've last gotten together, Austin. Just under 2 weeks. Feels like it's been forever. We are in the thick of the NFL offseason right now. March has just begun, and the NFL Combine is underway. We can talk a little bit about that later, but it is Season 3, Episode 2. It's time to start talking about the NFL Draft, Austin. Are you ready?
Yes, it is. I'm excited for it. This is going to be our first episode in 2 weeks. It's been a while.
Alrighty, but before we get into that, there's been obviously a lot of news to talk about in both the NFL and in Pittsburgh. First and foremost, the biggest Steelers news to talk about, though, is an update by Steelers general manager Kevin Colbert on the status of Ryan Shazier, stating that he will not play in 2018. He will still be involved with the team in some way, but he will be shut down for the 2018 season. So, now that everyone knows that Shazier is not going to be playing this year, does this change the Steelers' approach this offseason?
I don't think this really changes anything. I think the Steelers knew this was happening, so they will probably just bring in a free agent like they probably already planned and draft an inside linebacker pretty high. I think that's always been the plan. I think that's what they're ready for. They probably knew this for a little bit, too. So I'm guessing the game plan has not changed at all. But what do you think?
Yeah, they were definitely operating under the assumption he wasn't going to play this year. That was probably the right move, and I don't think anything's going to change here. So that's as simple as it is. Furthermore, regarding Shazier, it's something I've heard talked about a lot in Pittsburgh radio the last week or so. If Ryan Shazier is someday medically cleared to play football again and is able to return to his former self physically, how would you feel about him playing again? And I don't mean like playing as far as, being able to play football again. That's great. I hope if that's what he wants, I hope that's what he can do. But I mean more so the physical aspect of it, and in the sense that, like, how do you feel about him potentially, being open to that kind of injury again by, running around hitting people? Is that something that you've thought about a lot? Is it something that how would you feel about watching that, I guess? Because it's something that I've thought a little bit about, and I'm not really sure how I feel, but it's obviously something that's tough for himself to go through, obviously.
Yeah, honestly, I personally think that it's something that comes with football. It doesn't happen very often, so how would I feel about him playing again? I'd honestly feel fine. Injuries happen. An injury like that only happens once in a blue moon. I mean, it would be unfortunate if it happened to him twice. That would basically be a sign that he should retire. That'd be like, I think his name was David Wilson from the Giants. Do you remember him, the running back?
Yes, I do.
That happened to him twice when he had to retire following the second time. I feel like it's a risk you have to take. It's something he wants to do. I personally, you know what? It actually is kind of difficult because I didn't think of it this way. I mistook the question at first. The way he hits people is dangerous. The way he hits people is dangerous to himself. If he comes back to football and continues to do that, then I might be a little bit worried about it. I think he might change his game. I think he might play a little bit more, tackle a little bit more, not scared, but conservatively, like not lean in with the head like Shazier has mostly done. But what do you think on the subject?
You can't play scared. If you do, you're going to get hurt. That's the way it is. He absolutely needs to change his tackling style if he ever returns. I guess what I'm hung up on is I don't ever see how Shazier could be cleared, and yet there wouldn't be a higher re-injury risk. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, in theory, if he's cleared, it should be the same amount of risk as it ever, as with any other player. But I don't know how that can happen. And if it does, I don't know. There's just this feeling in the back of my mind, or this thought in the back of my mind that just, what if, I guess is the question, And if I'm thinking that, if we're all thinking that, I guess the real question is, how is Ryan thinking about it? He seems very determined to make it back, and that's great. But is there that doubt in his mind? I don't know. The fact of the matter is that he's going to have some time to think about it and just focus on his rehab, and that's good. But at some point in the future, if he gets to that point, he's going to have to make a very tough decision. All right. Moving on, the Miami Dolphins are expected to cut inside linebacker Lawrence Timmons, the original draft pick of Mike Tomlin in 2007, before the start of the new league year in less than 2 weeks. If he is cut, should the Steelers consider signing him?
My opinion on this changed from a hell yeah to like a lukewarm. He has to be a backup. That's it. Him and Vince Williams can't really play next to each other. Timmons can't play Shazier's role. He would provide depth, and he has experience with the Steelers, obviously, but he would have to come in for the right price and to be a backup, not a starter. We've learned that you can't have a slower linebacker where Shazier was. I think we saw that with Sean Spence. But given that Timmons is a better player than Spence every other regard, I think Spence's biggest downfall was his speed. And Lawrence Timmons, while he has straight line speed, I don't think he's older and he doesn't have that speed to get around in his zone as much. So I personally, at first I was like, this is a great idea. And then I realized, like, him and Vince Williams are two slow guys. I don't want that again. I think that was, again, Sean Spence's biggest downfall. So I think the Steelers should consider signing him for the right price, but I'm not as big on it as I was. What do you think?
I'm big on it just because he is not Sean Spence or LJ Fort. And yes, LJ Fort's a different type of player, but at the very least, we're talking about bolstering the Steelers' depth at their weakest position. This is a no-brainer to me, obviously, if the price is right, but I don't think there's going to be high demand for a player that disappointed in a pretty important year for, money-making wise as far as his career was concerned. I originally thought, maybe he can start over Vince Williams, but I think Vince Williams did a pretty good job in earning his starting job. Timmons can return and potentially start alongside. I don't think that's going to work over the long term, but I still think it's better than what the Steelers had at the end of last year. You're right, Timmons does still have good straight line speed, but he struggles with agility now, as will happen with a linebacker that's played as many snaps as he's played over his 10-plus year career. Look, it doesn't solve all the inside linebacker position problems, but the fact of the matter is signing him helps address the depth, and that's one less problem to worry about this offseason, even if it's only for a year or two. So I think it's just there are too many good things here, to not sign him, but at the same point, you shouldn't expect him to be 2014 Lawrence Timmons that was a Pro Bowler either. So just keep that in mind if you're going to sign him. All right, some more Steelers news that's been kind of back and forth all over the place. Originally, NFL.com reporter Ian Rappaport said the Steelers were listening to trade offers from Martavis Bryant. This was later explained by Steelers general manager Kevin Colbert at the Combine, saying that teams did call him inquiring about Martavis Bryant, but he wasn't interested, so he hung up the phone. So I guess the question I'm asking you, Austin, should the Steelers be willing to trade Martavis Bryant, and is it the right move to just completely not look into it at all? And if it changes at some point, what kind of a deal would you be looking for if you were Kevin Colbert?
Well, I think that he should have been hearing them. I felt like you never know if someone's going to offer something like ridiculous for a guy. I feel like we see trades every year where like, wow, that team really overpaid for him, or wow, that team really got fleeced for that guy. And I feel like for that reason alone, he should have just at least listened to say, hey, like, okay, we want to offer you this, and be like, if it's really not even where you want to be, like, obviously, you're not aiming to trade Bryant. You're waiting to see if there's a deal that someone's trying to make that's out of the park, and then you deal Bryant if that occurs, and then you keep him if you don't. I feel like it's almost dumb to not just listen to offers, especially when Bryant's on a one-year deal and he's probably more than likely leaving after this season. So, honestly, I personally would have wished that he listened to him. What he should have been gone for is if a team offered a fourth-round pick I feel like that would have been good enough. I feel like that's out of the park for a one-year deal. Maybe I feel like you'd be pushing it for a third-round pick, but if even that, maybe actually probably a third-round pick because that's super out of the park. That's what you should be willing to give up. I guarantee no team would come close in my mind, but I feel like you still sort of listen just in case some team like the Browns or something were like, hey, we want that guy for a third-round pick. But, yeah, what do you think?
I think the Steelers, I'm in complete agreement with you, should be paying attention just in case a team, like you said, does blow them away with a crazy offer. The fact of the matter is teams likely aren't going to give up anything more than a 6th or 7th round pick. And even if they got a 4th round pick for Bryant, like Jay Ajayi for the Eagles, I don't think it would make a ton of sense. And yes, a 4th round pick is a good idea, but I just think Bryant is important in the Steelers offense. And if he can kind of be the player that we saw at the end of the second half of last season and say that does contribute to a championship, I think that's more valuable than a 4th round pick. I mean, yes, they could be a Hall of Famer, but it's unlikely. But I don't know. The right price, I suppose, is 4th round pick or a 5th and a 7th or a free safety or inside linebacker that can play for you too. But I just don't see that happening. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that he should be listening to offers, or at least just not discounting them right away, but he's also probably not going to get a good offer either. So that'll conclude our Steelers news segment. So it's time to start previewing the draft. And last year we covered every position but kicker, punter, and long snapper. And this year we're going to be doing it a little bit differently. Last year we started with quarterbacks and went through the entire offense before going to the defense and finishing with the safeties. This time we wanted to kind of hit things going from the least important or least likely to be drafted in our minds to most likely to be drafted, lowest need to highest need. So we're going to start with specialists and quarterbacks because we see them as the least likely to be addressed in the draft this year. So specialists include kickers, punters, and long snappers. And obviously, the Steelers invested in one of those in the 6th round last year with Colin Holba, but he is not on the roster. So this is who the Steelers have right now at those 3 positions. They have one long snapper, Cameron Canaday, with a 1-year contract at $540,000 this year. Punter Jordan Berry with 1 year remaining on his deal of $1.9 million. And new punter Matt Weil, who was brought in to compete with Berry this year, he signed a 1-year $555,000 deal in 2018. All right, so the only free agent on this list, Austin, is a restricted free agent, Chris Boswell. What do the Steelers need to do here? Should they tender him? Should they extend him? What do they do here?
I'm going to say something that's pretty hot right now. It's a pretty hot take. Boswell needs a contract more than Bell does, in my opinion. Look at the Chargers this season. They didn't have a good kicker, and it lost them at least 2 games that I could remember. I remember the one against the Broncos vividly, as they were going to win it, but missed. Steelers need to lock down Boswell because he's very reliable. A reliable kicker is not easy to find either, especially not a Pro Bowl one. So Steelers need to lock him down, especially after he proved he could kick 50-yard field goals this season. He needs to be locked down. What do you think?
Well, he definitely needs to get at least a good tender. I think he should be extended as well. I don't think kickers and punters should get very long extensions because of how quickly they can go downhill. I mean, look at what happened with Jeff Reed. He was a solid kicker in the NFL and all of a sudden had just one terrible year and he was gone. So we've seen kickers, turn into crap really quickly. So I'd be okay with a 3 or 4 year extension. And if he's willing to do that, I think that'd be a great idea. He's been one of the best in the NFL over the past few years, and then this past year he turned into one of the elite kickers in football, top 5 kicker for sure. And that's just very important to have, even if they, aren't, if they're only kicking, but that's okay. They are leading scorers on a team for a reason. So, all right, back to what the Steelers have. We covered the 2 punters and long snappers. What do the Steelers have with this position group right now that obviously does not include a kicker?
Starting with punter, they have Berry, and for his competition, Matt Weil. I personally don't know much about Weil, but I know how Berry performed last year, so this definitely will be a competition. Argue how you want if Berry did terribly last season or not. No matter what you're arguing, whether he was just average or bad, it's replaceable regardless. This is going to be one of the few positions we see a competition for, so this is going to be an interesting one. At kicker, Steelers haven't tendered him yet, but they should have Chris Boswell, and I can't say enough good things about him. He really stepped up last year, and like I said, the 50-yard field goals really he got way more of those this year, and he hit them perfectly. Now, what's it called? Now we got Steelers have Canada, and he didn't make any mistakes last year and played under the radar like all long snappers do. So all we need is that reliable guy, and that's him. So that's what the Steelers have. What do you have to add?
When you mentioned Chris Boswell, I'm curious, real quick. What's the one thing Chris Boswell doesn't do well?
That's a good question.
Here's a hint.
It's
not something that he shouldn't have to be good at.
I'm sorry, what?
Here's a hint. It's not something he should really have to be good at if the team did its job on defense.
I honestly have no idea what you're going for. Tell me. I'm confused.
Onside kicks.
Oh, kickoff. Yep.
That's it. But in any case, what the Steelers have right now, they have a guy in Cameron Canada who played well last year, and you didn't really hear his name, which is a good thing among long snappers, as you said. Jordan Berry came off a disappointing season, which saw him set career lows in both yards per punt and average net yards per punt in his 3-year career. He had a career-long punt of 79 yards last season, which is nice, but if you take that punt away, it drops his average yards per punt, Austin, from 42.6 yards to 41.9. Did you know that?
One punt does all that?
79 yards, that's why.
Oh, my God.
Because it's almost double his average at that point.
Yeah, that's crazy that it does that much.
I did the math. I'm not a math wizard, but I did do it. As a result, though, Barry's job for next season is definitely not secure, and it shouldn't be, as evidenced by the Steelers signing free agent punter Matt Weil, formerly out of Michigan. I've done a little research on him. He bounced around the NFL for a few years, including teams like the Panthers, and has played in 4 career games. I believe he also played for the Cardinals. All of them were in 2016, where he averaged 46.1 yards on 12 punts. He averaged 40.2 yards per punt on 91 total punts over 4 years at Michigan. In his senior season, he only punted once, as he served primarily as the school's kicker. So he's mostly an unknown at the NFL who has good numbers but a very small sample size. I'd be shocked if Barry was not the favorite going into the training camp. Is there a free agent need at these positions, Austin? And if so, who are the targets?
The only one you could even argue is punter. Maybe you want stiffer competition than Wild, but personally, I don't think there's a free agency need. Punter and long snapper are set, and Boswell just needs the contract. So, what do you think?
Yeah, you just said it. The kicker position, the Steelers have their man, and they just need to get him re-signed or tendered. They have their long snapper, and the competition's already been brought in at punter, so there's no need to bring in anyone else. What about the draft need? Is that a little different?
There's no need whatsoever. Like I said, the only one that should be even thought about in my mind is punter. If Boswell doesn't get a contract, then Steelers need a kicker, but they still would be best to just bring in an undrafted free agent than waste a pick on a kicker. Definitely not long snapper in back-to-back years, please. But what do you think?
Not at all. It's completely unnecessary. So, just in case they do, because we never saw this coming last year, let's go over a couple long snapper prospects, and I know you took a look at both of them. So let's talk about them. The first guy you wanted to look at was from Oregon, correct?
Yes, he was. That's Tanner Carew from Oregon. He is 6'1", 241 pounds, and he is one of the 6 long snappers in this year's draft. And basically, he's the highest valued long snapper in the draft prior to the combine. And he has been one of the country's top-rated long snappers since his high school days. He finished college with 39 straight starts and 5 special teams tackles. So the positives about him is that he's mentally tough. He played through an ACL tear while at Oregon, which is crazy. You see players not be able to walk, and he's able to plant his feet and snap a ball. Then he consistently snaps the ball at a good speed and simultaneously puts it in the right place cleanly. Then his negatives, he is only good at long snapper. He has no experience at any other position, which a lot of teams who draft long snappers look for a guy who can contribute elsewhere, which is why they get drafted. Nextly, compared to NFL average, he is small and doesn't look like he has a body type to put on more weight. Then finally, he's a slow runner, so he probably will not be much help on punt coverage. So overall, there have only been 3 long snappers drafted since 2010, but still Tanner is expected to be drafted in the 6th or 7th round as he is a top end guy. Therefore, the Steelers should draft him in the 5th round since they don't have a 6th-round pick just to cut him for Canada later. Now on to the other long snapper, Ike Powell from Auburn. Currently the 2nd best ranked long snapper prior to the Combine. He played 4 games as a true freshman for Auburn and then took on the starting job the following year, playing effectively for Auburn from 2015 to 2017. What's positive about him? He has above average size. He's a 3-year long snapper, and he delivered punt snaps with consistent accuracy and good velocity. So what's negative to him is a very slight hitch in the delivery. On field goals, he has been slightly inconsistent on lace delivery, which is not a concern you really want from a long snapper. It is one of the few things you have to have them do reliably. But, I mean, for him, it wasn't like a huge problem. It wasn't happening on a very consistent basis. But overall, Powell is expected to be drafted in the 7th round or go undrafted. But even if he goes undrafted, he is expected to make a team. Therefore, the Steelers should double dip in this position this year and draft him in the 7th round, and then cut him later for Canada as well. So we'll have Ike Powell, Canada, and Tanner Crew on the team all at once. I think that's a good idea. I think the Steelers agree. So that's it for long snappers. Very short. They don't obviously have much written about them. There's not really much to talk about. So you did kicker and punter, so let's hear about the 2 guys you went over.
But wait, I'm very interested to see how 3 long snappers could perform in training camp. Let's sign one as a free agent, too.
You could. You could bring in 4. Or you know what? You could even get crazy and get 5.
Where's Greg Warren? Can we get him back?
Oh, man.
Eddie Pinerio, sorry. That's how you say his name. The kicker from the University of Florida, the top-rated kicker prospect coming out of the draft this year. Pinerio, just a quick overview. There's a reason he's regarded as one of the best, if not the best, kicker prospects. He made 17 of his 18 field goals last year and has been pretty dependable for a team that struggled on offense last year. If you want to look at results, as far as the positives go, look no further than this guy. In 2 years at Florida, he made his 29 of his last 30 field goals. He missed only 5 in his total career and 7 kicks total in 2 years, 2-point-after attempts. This guy is as automatic as it gets. He also went 5 for 5 with kicks 50-plus yards out, and 39 of his 50 kickoffs in his career went for touchbacks. This is last year. 39 of his 50 kickoffs went for touchbacks. That, at 79%, led the Southeastern Conference, which is typically considered the minor league for the NFL. His 88.4 career field goal percentage is the highest in Florida Gators history. And, last year, it turns out he's a pretty good guy. He helped prevent a domestic violence incident. So that seems like he has a pretty good head on his shoulders, so that's pretty nice. If you want to talk negatives with this guy, there's not too much to say regarding kickers. He was around all across the board pretty highly ranked in all statistics for kickers. But the fact of the matter is, kickers are pretty mentally unstable, it seems, when they're coming from the college ranks. Sometimes it's tough to tell which ones are going to be successful in the NFL. Most of them aren't drafted kickers. You'll get your very rare Roberto Aguayo and Sebastian Janikowski, but even they don't always produce, obviously. So drafting a kicker is something you have to be careful about. So the bottom line is the Steelers don't need to draft one, obviously, if they retain Boswell, and there's no reason they shouldn't. If the Steelers were in a position to need a kicker, I would say Pinerio is one I'd want. Seemingly a good person off the field with killer results on the field. Again, you don't need a kicker, and it's not something you really need to take a risk on, especially this year. The one position where if the Steelers really needed one, and didn't have other positions to address, I'd say punter would be a good position to address. And that is, of course, the top punter in the draft this year is going to be Michael Dixon from the University of Texas. He won the 2017 Ray Guy Award, which is the best punter in the nation. So that's a pretty good start. He's also from Australia. We've seen a lot of punters from Australia lately. I believe Brad Wing is from there, too.
That is correct.
Former Steeler punter. And, Dixon doesn't subscribe to the theory that punters aren't football players. Not only did he average exactly 47 yards per punt in each of the last 2 seasons, did you know he was named the MVP of the Texas Bowl last year?
I had no idea. That's how.
How, you might ask, Austin? Well, here's how. He had 10 punts downed inside the 20-yard line. You heard me right, Austin. 10, count them 10 punts inside the 20-yard line.
No offense in that game? What?
Look it up real quickly while you have a moment. But yes, Austin, I'm not lying to you. There were 10 punts by him inside the 20-yard line. And by the way, just a reminder, there was 1 punt in the Super Bowl this year. I'll get into that game a little more in a minute. As far as some positives go, let's go over the raw stats. After an average 2015 season where he averaged 41.3 yards per punt, he stepped it up, averaging 47.4 yards in his last 2 years. Can he flip the field in a big game, though? Well, I already touched on that crazy game he had where he had 10 punts inside the 20-yard line. Here's his final stat line from that game. 11 punts for 452 yards. Oh, but that's only an average of 41.1 yards, you might tell me. Well, yes, it is, but as I said before, there was a ton of those downed inside the 20. But here's how many were downed inside the 5-yard line, Austin. 4. 4 of those punts were downed inside the 5-yard line. You want to know how many rolled into the end zone for a touchback?
How many?
0. So when you have the ability to pin a team that deep, that often, you know what you're doing. And yeah, the coverage team definitely has something to do with it, but this guy can place the football pretty well. And he won the Guy Award before this game. So he had that monster game, won the MVP award after winning the Punter of the Year award. So there's a lot of good things to say about this guy. So what are the negatives? Well, Dixon is a punter, and drafting him, after downing that many punts inside an opponent's 20-yard line may make a team, especially like the Browns, want to punt the ball away whenever possible to make the other team start inside their own 10-yard line. But for real, it's the same story as the kicker position. These guys don't always translate to the NFL very well. So it's something that you're taking a big risk on if you're passing up other positions to draft it. So bottom line for Dixon, he looks like an amazing upgrade over Jordan Berry, Austin. I'm not going to lie. I watched his highlights from that game because I was like, there's no way. And if for some reason he's on the board in the 7th and the Steelers have addressed other positions, I kind of want the Steelers to get this guy. And I don't think he'll be available. But boy, what a fantastic option it'd be to have him force other teams to go 90 yards consistently. So let me call Dixon a luxury prospect for the Steelers, who likely won't be there in the 7th round, but if he is, the Steelers should get him. They definitely should. So, in any case, what's the trio kicker, punter, long snapper combo going to be in 2018?
It's going to be the same lineup as last year for the Steelers, is my guess. No shakeups on special teams. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see anything changing. There's no reason Matt Weil should beat out Jordan Berry. At least I don't think so. So it's a pretty cut and dry there. Another position that we're getting into is the quarterback position. So here's what we got. It's pretty simple. You have Ben Roethlisberger, who has 2 years remaining on his deal. Happy birthday to him, by the way. He just turned, 36?
I think 37, actually.
Wow. Oh, man. Wow. I remember watching him his rookie year, and I was a young kid. Oh, man, we're getting old. In any case, he has 2 years left on his deal, each year at $23.2 million, totaling $46.4 million. Backup quarterback Landry Jones has 1 year remaining on his has $2.2 million remaining this year. Josh Dobbs is signed at $704,781 this year. He has a total of $2.4 million remaining on the next 3 years of his rookie deal. The Steelers have no free agents at this position this year, so those are the guys. And what do the Steelers have in those guys?
Well, they have their starter and future Hall of Famer Big Ben for hopefully the next 3 years. even though he's only signed for the next 2. They have a decent backup in Landry Jones, but not a guy who can replace Ben. And then finally a project quarterback in Joshua Dobbs, who we don't really know what he's capable of. But he was drafted in the 4th round, so you could – I'm sorry, in the 3rd round. My apologies. So you could only really hope he turns into a gem. But if you followed along for our last year's draft analysis, you know he was my least favorite quarterback we had now. I was about to say analyze. Wrong. But and I don't think he will turn into anything much, personally. I was not a fan of him. I must have went – I was really mean about him. I didn't like him at all. And then we drafted him, and I was like, oh, great. So I don't think he's going to turn into much. What do you think?
Well, Austin, I don't know if I've told you this, but I was actually feeling the exact same way when the Steelers drafted Landry Jones. I hated him before the Steelers drafted him, and they did. And when my friend texted me... You hated him
before it was cool.
Yep. And when my friend... Seriously, go look at my Twitter. I have an old picture at Steelers training camp, and I think I was making fun of him or something like that. Something childish, but... I was like, why? I remember one year at training camp, I took a video of him taking a terrible pass. I hated this guy. And when my best friend in high school texted me the day of the draft, because I was on a college visit, I remember this very vividly. He said the Steelers drafted Landry Jones, and I'm like, don't joke with me about that. I'm like, seriously, don't joke. That's not funny. And he's like, I'm serious. And I was like, Dad, I need your phone right now.
Oh, no, that's awful.
PTSD.
I didn't know you hated him prior to everyone hating him. Like I said, you hated him before it was cool to hate him.
I have some great things to tell you about after this show. But in any case, you mentioned Josh Dobbs was a 3rd-round pick. He actually was a 4th-round pick. He was picked higher than he was projected. He was a projected 5th-round pick. But I remember he was a 4th-round pick because he was picked at the same number pick where Dak Prescott was picked a year before.
Yeah, I was confusing him. For some reason, I had James Conner and him going in the same round when it was James Conner and Cameron Sutton who went in the same round. I got confused. I had it written down right. You saw I had it written down right. And in my mind, I was like, oh, no, that's wrong.
That's why I was confused. I was just looking around. I was looking at it with you, and I was like, what? But in any case... what do the Steelers have? Well, as you already commented, the Steelers have their franchise quarterback entrenched for a couple more years. Backup quarterback Landry Jones entering the final year of his contract. He's been reliable the last 3 seasons as a backup. 3rd-string quarterback Josh Dobbs enters his 2nd season. You already talked about it, Austin. You weren't happy with the pick. I wasn't happy with it either. We both didn't really see the Dobbs pick as being certainly not the future to the Steelers at starting quarterback. More likely as the future replacement for Landry Jones. But then again, as we just talked about with my hate for Landry Jones, he turned out to be okay. So maybe Dobbs can too. But I think we really need to see some improvement from him this year. Don't you agree?
I think so. I think I want to see some more out of him.
I think
personally, I'm honestly hoping for the best. I don't want to assume the kid is bad and I honestly, since he's a Steeler, I just want him to be successful. So I'm just hoping for something.
I remember we both said that we didn't expect a lot from him last preseason, and he wasn't very good. But this was going to be the year we wanted to see something. So, in any case, are the Steelers going to add a free agent this offseason?
No. The simple answer is no. The long answer is they have Ben Roethlisberger, Landry Jones, and Josh Dobbs. No. What do you think?
Yep, you're completely right. They're adding a camp arm, and that's going to be it. He's going to be gone by, week 1, barring injury, of course. But what about drafting, though? Should the Steelers look into drafting a guy to be a replacement for any of these guys? Does that make any sense right now?
Non-existent, in my opinion. There are some people, like last year when there's the Ben Roethlisberger retirement scare, everyone's like, they need to go a quarterback round 1. And some of those guys are still hanging around, I've noticed. So some people think that this need to draft the quarterback of the future. My personal opinion, Ben said he's staying for 3 more years. I have faith in him to be good for at least 3 more years. There's no need for a quarterback at all in any round. What do you think?
Yeah, no, there's no need. Your starter, backup, and 3rd stringer are set in stone this year. There's no need to draft. There's no need to draft a backup or 3rd stringer for next year. You can do that next year. You don't need to do that now. So, no reason. So, I guess let's move forward. Just for some reason, if the Steelers do take quarterbacks, again, this is how we're doing it. We're going with least likely to be picked, in our opinion, to most likely. We've got 5 different quarterbacks covered today. Austin took 3 since he wanted to go with a early, mid, and late round selection. I just took 2 mid and late round picks, our most likely projection picks. And Austin, you have the most interesting one at all. I'm going to have a couple questions for you on this one, but started off with Lamar Jackson, the guy who met with the Steelers at the Combine today.
Yeah, I found that interesting. I actually picked him before this happened, obviously. And obviously, he's out of Louisville. He's 6'3" and 200 pounds. You would almost forget that he was the 2016 Heisman winner, as he's considered only the 4th best quarterback in this draft due to his size and build. But he has shown that he can play quarterback, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is the next Mike Vick. He's being doubted so hard, but I have high hopes for him, although he's not my style quarterback. At the minimum, if he's a bust at quarterback, he could try to transition into being a wide receiver instead like Pryor. Although he said today no teams are even asking him to try and play wide receiver, so there's that. But so what's positive about him? What's great about Jackson is he's a playmaker, throwing the ball as well as carrying it. He has big play potential written all over him. The ball comes out fluidly without wasted motion when he throws, and he definitely has the arm to fling it if necessary. But also, he can get the ball out with a flick of the wrist compared to how Mike Vick could get the ball out. He has improved his poise in the pocket and pre-snap plan every year, and as well as improving his ability to hold linebackers and safeties with his eyes, and he does that at an above-average level. Due to his dual threat ability, he often needs a spy on him, softening coverage he will go up against, and also his scrambling forces cornerbacks to make a decision on whether they stick to their man or come down and run support. Also, as a runner, he destroys pursuit angles, has the elusiveness and open field instincts as an elite running back, knows when his speed can outmatch a tackler so he can focus on the next level of danger, and has had 10 rushing touchdowns of over 40 yards in 3 seasons. So what's negative about him? His body type is very thin, below average for an NFL quarterback. Due to his playmaking potential, he doesn't ever slide, and he'll need to learn how to in the NFL because he can't eat the big hits in the NFL like he does in college. When he throws with a stiff front side and a narrow base. He flips the ball a lot rather than throwing it, which is an interesting one. I found that weird when looking over his player profile. He often will make his target work too hard for the ball. His deep throw accuracy is questionable at times, sometimes sailing throws that end up in the hands of safeties, and sometimes he actually underthrows it. He's inconsistent. It allows corners to get in that regard. His low release point leads to a lot of tip passes and will be a lot more in the NFL if he doesn't learn to release a bit higher. His pocket awareness could use some work. He is highly inaccurate on throws while running, especially in the 2017 season, and that has led him to have a relatively high turnover rate. So, to review all this information, Lamar Jackson has rightfully earned himself Mike Vick comparisons. He has a cannon to throw and also is dangerous as a runner. Not only that, but he has some upside in the fact that even if he's the bust at quarterback, he has another chance at playing at a receiver position. My deepest concern with him is his accuracy, but despite being a different body size, Cam Newton is working out decently in the NFL, and it's because of what he can do with his legs, and that makes up for Cam Newton's inaccuracy. No one ever even thinks of Cam Newton being a bad quarterback. I personally think Cam Newton's super overrated because of his inaccuracy, but a lot of people in the fans forget about that because he is so good with his legs. So I think Jackson has a good chance to still be a successful starter in the NFL and will probably go late in the first round or early in the second. He's probably closest in the NFL right now. His closest comparison is probably Tyrod Taylor. He's skinny like Tyrod Taylor. He moves like Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor is inaccurate, not the best. I feel like that's his closest comparison right now. And so you said you had a few questions for me about Lamar Jackson?
Yes, I do. It's more so a hypothetical question just because the Steelers are not going to be taking a quarterback in the first round. So let's say, because this happened a few years ago with the 2013 draft, I think it was, where there was only one quarterback taken in the first round, and that was E.J. Manuel. Now, let's just say there's 3 quarterbacks that go in the first round, and none of them are Jackson. And for whatever reason, it's the third round, and the Steelers get their inside linebacker, they get their free safety, and Jackson, for some reason, is on the board. Do the Steelers consider taking him at all?
I feel like, that's a hard one. I feel like the answer is still no. I feel like third round is, now it's time for wide receiver. I think that having maybe Lamar, I don't know, Steelers like to practice best player available. So maybe if I'm the Steelers, Lamar Jackson is probably the best player available. But who do you cut then? Do you cut Landry Jones because he's the most expensive? Do you cut Josh Dobbs because he's the project player? There's just so much depth to that question. I'm going to say no personally. If I was in that position, no, I'm taking a wide receiver probably. But I could see the Steelers taking him if he fell that deep into the third round, because that means he's pushing the fourth round. That's pretty far in.
I would.
You would?
Yep. And then, depending on how the preseason goes, I'd cut the worst quarterback, not Roethlisberger, the worst quarterback of Dobbs or Jones. And this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I'd let Jackson sit for at least 1 year and beef up, maybe 2 years. And then at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's contract, depending on how Jackson is looking and perhaps playing, regardless of what Roethlisberger does, I might let him walk, and I might have Jackson take over. Again, this is just extreme hypotheticals at this point, but if he's available that late, that kind of playmaking ability, you give him some time to beef up a little bit and study behind a Hall of Fame quarterback. Not every player has the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre treatment, and usually 3 years is too long, but, I don't know. I think that's something I might consider. A lot would have to happen for that, and I don't think any of it's going to happen, but it's just something I think I would do. I don't know.
You never know, because obviously, I think we started. Did we start this podcast, or were we talking about this before, where Carl Lawson was a projected first rounder, and he literally fell into the third round because of things that came up? He fell all the way to the third round.
I don't think we talked about it on the show, but it is worth bringing up, obviously. The edge rusher for the Bengals we're talking about. But then again, obviously you'd want Roethlisberger for life as a Steeler, and maybe he'd retire after that, but did anybody really think Peyton Manning wasn't going to finish his career in Indianapolis in 2010?
No. The short answer is no.
Exactly. So you never know what will happen. Exactly. You are exactly right. But in any case, it's time to move on to another prospect. I'm going to talk about a mid-round projection, and Mike White out of Western Kentucky University, a redshirt senior. White took a kind of unusual path to the draft. The 6'4", 225-pounder, age unknown, by the way. I could not find his age anywhere for some reason. In high school, Mike White was actually a baseball star. He earned a Louisville Slugger All-American honors before his junior year as a pitcher, but became the starting quarterback his senior year at high school, where his aspirations of going pro in a sport changed from baseball to football. His team won the state championship in 2012, and White earned the Class AAA Player of the Year. White signed with the University of South Florida, where he had 2 pretty uninspiring seasons splitting time at the quarterback position, losing his job after throwing for a combined 2,722 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions. White then transferred to Western Kentucky, where he thrived after his redshirt transfer season in 2015, throwing back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons in 2016 and 17, being named second All-Conference USA at the quarterback position both years. He threw a combined 63 touchdowns in his last 2 years to only 15 interceptions. As far as his strengths, White has fantastic arm strength. As a former pitcher, White dialed up 90-mile-per-hour fastballs at 17 years old as a junior in high school, and it really shows when he throws the football. He really drives his legs into his throws and has pretty good accuracy when doing so. This allows him to be able to fit the ball into pretty tight windows over the middle, and this means that he not only can, but is willing to do so. White displays a nice ability to throw hard and fast passes, while dropping in a nice touch pass when needed over the top. Excuse me. He has a good deep ball and has a high completion percentage when throwing those deep balls from the pocket. He was asked at times to make full field reads of defenses as well. But on the flip side, as far as his weaknesses go, it takes him a lot of time to set his feet in the pocket. Poor pass protection over his college career has negatively impacted the way he reacts to it. He doesn't have a great feel for pressure off the edge and stops looking downfield immediately once he sees that the pocket is being pushed. And yes, he can make reads in the pocket, like I said, but he's slow at processing them. He relies too much on his arm talent and isn't good at moving in the pocket, meaning he's going to be the cause for a good portion of the sacks that he takes. So the bottom line on White is that he seems like a player with a lot of talent, and that's because he does have talent. But he does project as a mid to late round pick because he is older, and despite his great size, his poise and presence in the pocket is not good. His statistical regression, in his senior season was also concerning, but it at least can partially be attributed to playing with a poor offensive line. But he doesn't make his reads quick enough, and he doesn't react to pressure well enough. It will likely keep him from being drafted early. Lance Zierlein of NFL.com compared him to former Steeler quarterback Zach Mettenberger, so something interesting to look at. So that wraps it up for my first quarterback. Who's your second quarterback that you looked at, Austin?
My second quarterback is Luke Falk out of Washington State. He is 6'4" and 225 pounds. Falk set several Pac-12 career records, including total offense, passing touchdowns, passing yards, completions, and attempts. Although his final season didn't really go as planned, as he was benched a couple of times, but he still finished the season with a 66.9% completion rate, 30 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. He also won the Brandon Burlsworth Trophy for the top walk-on in the nation in 2017 and was a finalist 2 other years. So what's good about him is his height allows him to see over the linemen and them all over the mess up front with ease while he stands in the pocket with confidence. A quick setup with quick moving feet, and he also has a quick compact release to go along with it that ends up in a great spiral almost all the time. He can get the ball to guys in front of him and on short throws fast and accurately, and possesses the ability to attack defenders in one-on-one situations with fades and back shoulder throws. He also excels on accurate timing throws on deep outs, as he's been in a system that takes pride in that for years. He possesses the talent to accurately unload a ball while off balance, which obviously isn't easy for most quarterbacks. He knows how to sidestep in the pocket to buy time. He can deliver balls perfectly to receivers in stride. Then finally, he will look off high safety out of position to open the middle of the field for a post throw. He's pretty good at using his eyes to get people out of position in easier terms. What's bad about him, his quick release disguises inconsistent arm strength. That shows sometimes when throwing field side or deep middle where he tends to float balls, allowing defenders to close in. He needs to work on his ball trajectory to get it lower between the hash. He tends to make bad decisions to try and force a ball down the field when off balance, sometimes resulting in turnovers. He's overly patient at times, not releasing until the receiver is in traffic. He is slow to see on incoming blitzers and also fails to find his hot route often when getting blitzed, which is bad because he's already below average mobility and has been sacked 125 times in his career. So you know this is going to be a consistent problem when he gets to the NFL. His poise in the pocket has been inconsistent through his seasons. He panics after early reads don't work out, and something concerning is the most of his interceptions come against zone, showing that he may not understand coverages that well. And he also is an Alex Smith type prior to this past season where 74% of his attempts were less than 10 yards down the field. So I would compare Falk, because of that, to a far less mobile Alex Smith. He's a bit taller, too, and heavier, but experts are comparing him to Mike Glennon coming out. His lack of mobility that has led to all the sacks and quarterback hits and made scouts wonder if he could take that same beating in the NFL. And thus that leads me to put his ceiling at a late third round. And I think his base is in the fifth round, but more than likely he'll be going somewhere in between there, like the fourth or so. So, who is your second prospect?
My second prospect is quarterback Kurt Benkert out of the University of Virginia. Also a senior, standing at 6'4", 215 pounds. He's 22 years old. Benkert, a quick overview, he's pretty used to change, actually. He played in 3 different secondary schools growing up before earning the Class 6A, All-State honors in 2012. After signing with East Carolina University in 2013, he redshirted his freshman year, then got some playing time as a reserve in 2014, but only threw 10 passes. He finally won the starting job in 2015, but suffered a season-ending knee injury that year before he got to play. Then he lost his job in spring ball in 2016, so he transferred to the University of Virginia, where he didn't have to sit out a season because he actually became a graduate student. He got his degree in 3 years. Benkert then started 10 games in 2016, throwing for 2,552 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. A pretty good year, but he really opened pro scouts' eyes this year when he threw for 3,207 yards, 25 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions. So what are some of his strengths? Benkert has pretty good size for an NFL quarterback, similar to Mike White, and he also has good arm talent. He also has the ability to drive the ball with his legs with a high velocity, and he can fit the ball into tight windows, especially on deep throws. He's not afraid to throw to the boundaries and can throw the ball far while rolling to his right. He's got excellent pocket presence and ability, consistently showing the ability to climb the pocket, and his quick feet make him an effective scrambler. And therefore, when he's doing it, not only is he a threat to run, but he also keeps his eyes upfield too, so he can also throw the ball too. As far as his weaknesses go, he has a pretty low completion percentage throughout his career. And yes, there were a lot of drops at Virginia. He didn't help his case by having a low release point that led to a lot of deflected passes at the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have natural accuracy with his throws and struggles with a lot of simple throws that you'd want to see from quarterbacks. Very inconsistent throwing in the middle of the field. He looks lost at times when he's trying to complete those passes over the middle. He's made a habit of making incorrect reads, especially on blitzes that cause him to get sacked or make poor throws. He'll throw into a crowd of defenders often, so most of his interceptions are actually just poor results of poor decision-making. And when he's forced to leave the pocket, he's actually even worse. Despite being able to scramble and throw the ball far, he doesn't throw it accurately when he leaves the pocket. He completed just under 40% of his passes outside the pocket this year. So bottom line, in a similar fashion to Mike White, the good things about Benkert are good, but the bad things are pretty bad too. The great arm talent and the ability to extend a play is great. He's a good athlete. But conversely, the bad that comes with Benkert's really bad. He's not a good decision maker, and he needs to work on his accuracy on even the simple throws, which is not something you want to see from a fifth-year college player. He struggles to counter with blitzes, and if he can't improve in those areas, he's not going to make it to the NFL, as simply put. At this point, he projects at best as a late-round pick, with current upside and projection as a third-string quarterback or potentially depth quarterback, with a high-end projection to become a backup if he can improve his mechanics and decision-making. Oh, man. So Benkert is not as highly projected as Mike White from Western Kentucky was. Who is your final quarterback prospect that you looked at?
My final prospect is Nick Stevens from Colorado State. He is 6'3" and 215 pounds. Stevens had tough shoes to fill after becoming the starter following the 2014 season when starter Garrett Grayson was drafted in the 3rd round in 2015 to the New Orleans Saints. I believe right now he is with the Atlanta Falcons, if I remember correctly. But Stevens came out pretty good in his first year. But the rest was a mixed bag, getting benched at times. But he's got an honorable mention all-conference pick by completing 54.2% of his throws for 1,936 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions after Colin Hill got hurt and he came back to start. What's good about him is he's been described as a real leader in the locker room because of his maturity, according to his head coach, which that may not seem like much in a football standpoint, but it's important to have just when drafting a player. Just look at Johnny Manziel. Stevens has experience working under center with pro-style passing concepts and throws with timing outside the hashes with and throws with timing outside the hashes with great ball placement and accuracy, making up for limited arm talent. He also has a really nice touch on fades near the goal line. He knows how to throw a receiver out of trouble, and he's mentally tough. He got benched in his first game of the 2016 season and has thrown 48 touchdowns and just 13 interceptions since then. What's bad about him is basically most of his problems stem from his stature and body type. He has a skinny frame with spindly legs, which make him not ready for NFL pocket violence. He has well below average arm strength for the NFL, which causes him to throw without velocity and float basically everything. Stevens threw a poor ratio of 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions on intermediate and deep throws this past year. He is inaccurate on deep sideline throws, and he is a below-average athlete. So just to review, as he is now, Stevens is not NFL ready. But what's interesting about him is if he could work towards it. A lot of his problems come from his lack of strength. If you put in the effort over the next year, probably take a year off. I'd be surprised if a team signs him, to be honest. If he puts in the effort to get his strength up and conditioning and become better than a below-average athlete and get a strong arm, he could be a good quarterback in the NFL with the instincts he has and his maturity. As of right now, though, he'll probably go undrafted and probably be signed as a camp arm, maybe. He doesn't have a NFL-ready arm, so I feel like you would just get someone who could just throw really hard instead. But at most, he may make it as a quarterback 3 if he is lucky, if he doesn't do some serious work before the NFL season starts. But that's my last prospect.
Alrighty. So now that we've gone over a list of guys, we didn't rank our previous prospects because there weren't really anything to rank. I mean, are you really going to rank your long snapper prospects, Austin? I didn't expect that.
Tanner Crew way better than...
you can't even remember his name. Exactly. But with quarterbacks, it's a little different. So, Austin, last year we ranked them as far as how we preferred them, but this time I want you to rank the prospects you looked at as far as how you think they'd best fit with the Steelers, because obviously you'd rather have Lamar Jackson than, Nick Stevens, right? I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty, so
sorry.
Go ahead.
My bad. I didn't realize I was supposed to be going. But so I've actually had Nick Falk first because I think he's the best fit. I think he would be drafted at the best position if the Steelers were to draft a quarterback. I would feel okay if they went a quarterback in the round that he was going. I think he's the best for them. Then I have 2 is Lamar Jackson because I think Lamar Jackson could be a pretty good player. He's explosive. He has high potential, in my opinion. But then 3rd is Nick Stevens. I don't see a reason for Nick Stevens to be drafted. I don't see him to be a reason to be brought in, really, because he doesn't even have an arm to be a camp arm. So Nick Stevens is my 3rd. So how do you rank your 2 prospects?
I had Western Kentucky's Mike White over University of Virginia's Kurt Benkert. Look, they're both pretty similar players. They have strong, talented arms. They have good builds and frames for a prototypical quarterback. But it's clear that White is a more refined quarterback, and his shortcomings aren't as problematic as Benkert's. A lot of White's problems could be stemmed from poor protection, and with the proper training and protection at the NFL level, it's reasonable to assume he'd have a higher upside. And just beyond that, the simple fact of the matter is when you're struggling to complete basic throws and you're projected to be a late-round pick with the Steelers situation, a late-round pick on a quarterback is a waste of a pick. I mean, most picks of a quarterback for the Steelers in this draft would be a waste, but at least Benkert would have the potential, in my mind, to replace Josh Dobbs. But that's it. So I think it goes without saying, Austin, but I think the quarterback depth chart is going to be the same as it was last year, with Roethlisberger as your starter, Landry Jones and Josh Dobbs backing him up and playing at 3rd string. So is there really anything else you wanted to add there?
Josh Dobbs is starting. Can confirm.
For the Browns?
No, Josh Dobbs is just starting for the Steelers. They're benching Ben this season.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Exactly. So let's just end it right there. But no, there's a lot of NFL news to get to, Austin. So let's start with I guess in the wake of the tragedy that occurred in Parkland, Florida a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you saw this, but former Miami Dolphins offensive lineman Jonathan Martin, who was front and center with Richie Incognito for the whole bullying scandal a couple of years ago. Do you remember that?
Yes.
He was detained after a disturbing picture he posted on his Instagram story. The picture contained a pump shotgun with shotgun shells in the frame, along with the caption, quote, "When you're a bully victim and a coward, your options are suicide or revenge," end quote. Martin tagged his high school in a hashtag and two of his former graduates, along with two former Dolphins teammates, including Incognito and Steelers Marquise Pouncey, his brother Mike Pouncey, was tagged as well. The school which he used the hashtag for, Harvard Westlake, responded to the picture by shutting down school and campus for the day. Did you really have anything you wanted to say about that? I guess, what do you think about that?
I don't want to comment on it. I think it's just scary. It's a scary world we live in. That's it.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to add. It's clear he's disturbed and he needs help. So I'm glad nothing happened. Beyond that, the really big NFL news that's occurred lately was a trade between the Los Angeles Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs get a fourth-round pick from this year from the Rams and a 2019 second-round pick for their sixth-round pick this year, and cornerback Marcus Peters. The Rams, seemingly, if they had a weakness on defense, was their secondary. It looks like they just shored that up. Are they NFC West favorites again? And how does this really help their team, besides, how I just mentioned?
Yeah, the Seahawks defense isn't what it used to be, and the offense doesn't have a starting running back. And to be honest with you, they aren't even the ones who I think are threatening the Rams the most. Most people, I think, are thinking Seahawks. I think the 49ers may actually have a shot at this year. They are real X factors. If Garoppolo can keep up what he did in those last 5 games, the 49ers may actually be great again and may be the Rams' biggest competitors. I won't rule out the Cardinals either if they could secure a quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins could make them a competitor because they have a lot of good pieces around them, especially with David Johnson returning. But as of right now, I can't really say anything about the Cardinals because they don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be. But Marcus Peters brings another playmaker into the Rams defense. He's not the greatest in coverage, but he knows how to make plays either. He knows how to make plays either breaking up passes and intercepting balls. I think he's a great guy to bring in and help boost the Rams defense. He's also one of the Steelers to draft in the 2015 draft, was unfortunately gone before the Steelers picked. But yeah, what do you have to say about Marcus Peters?
Marcus Peters is a pretty good cornerback. He's a former Pro Bowler. He knows how to make plays on the ball, like you said. I don't really have much more to add, like you said, but the fact of the matter is the Rams' biggest weakness on defense was in the back end, and he's not the best cover guy, but he's going to make some plays for your defense. And even if he's not a great cornerback when it comes to coverage, that's still important to have, and I think that's important for a team that's trying to become a more rounded football team. As far as the NFC West goes, I don't think the Cardinals are serious contenders without a quarterback right now. The Seahawks are trending in the wrong direction, in my opinion, based on what I've seen. In any case, I'm forgetting the 49ers, of course. Jimmy Garoppolo had an interesting last couple of months in San Francisco. I want to say he can continue it, but I'm also not sure if he's going to be able to do it over the course of the full season. So, in any case, I'm going to have Austin confirm this for me for a second. You just brought it up to me. The information I might have said about Marcus Peters and a 6th-round pick in 2018 going to the Chiefs, that might not be necessarily correct. Now, that was according to an article from NFL.com by Kevin Patra. So, Austin, you said you've got some more information on it?
Yeah, Pro Football Talk, SB Nation, Sports Illustrated, all seem to be saying that it's 4th. I did find that one NFL article that says it. I actually have it from another guy. It says by Edward Lewis, and he writes 4th as well. So he writes 6th round as well. So it's really the other articles might be wrong. I feel like the NFL people should have it right the most. It's just weird that two different NFL people say sixth, and then everyone else is saying fourth. That's a odd thing.
Well, we'll know on draft time. So, I mean, we'll see what we can do for confirming that in the upcoming days. Some other information I wanted to pass along to you. Word has it that former Penn State running back Saquon Barkley is under psychiatric evaluation. Do you know what he did?
What did he do?
He said it would be quote-unquote awesome to join the Browns. I just thought, I think it was kind of an emergency situation there. Hopefully he's okay, because clearly he did not mean what he said.
Yeah, geez. He's the best running back in this draft. It'd be a shame if he just had pulled a Laramie Tunsil and just broke down right before the draft.
Oh, breaking news from NFL.com on Baker Mayfield. Not breaking news per se, but on NFL.com, Baker Mayfield, quote, "If there's anyone to turn around the Browns, comma, it's me," end quote. I believe Mayfield has just been checked into psychiatric evaluation as well. Hopefully he's okay. Oh man, we don't have enough fun on this show. I'm glad we just did that. Someone who's not having a ton of fun right now is Doug Martin. He was just cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. In his 6-year career with the Buccaneers, Doug Martin was a 2-time Pro Bowler and is actually 4th in team history in rushing yards with 4,633. How are you best going to remember Martin's time with Tampa?
I honestly liked Doug Martin just 2 years ago. I really loved him as a running back. I liked his nickname that he was the muscle hamster. I thought he did really well for them. I thought he was a good player to have. I mean, he didn't really show up this year due to suspension. And then it didn't really pan out. So I don't really remember much, anything specific about his days with Tampa. Do you?
I just remember I had him 1 year in fantasy and he was okay. That's about it. I mean, I know he made a good amount of money for running backs, and the last 2 years he averaged under 3 yards a carry, so that's why he was cut. So, another running back who had a more successful career, Matt Forte of the Jets and previously of the Bears, has just announced his retirement a couple days ago from the NFL after 10 seasons. He totaled 14,468 scrimmage yards and scored 99 career touchdowns. Congratulations to him on a wonderful career. And he really was a dynamic back, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was one of the better receiving backs. I remember it was only a few years ago where he was known as probably the best receiving back in football. It's a shame I'm really upset that he retired before getting one more touchdown. I wanted him to get one more touchdown and then say, "Yep, I'm done." That's it.
I kind of felt the same way about Hines Ward in a different sense because he only had 85, but one more would have been the number he wore on his jersey. So that's just one of those things that's always going to bother you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Veteran linebacker David Harris of the New England Patriots also announced his retirement. He played 11 years in the NFL, a decade with the Jets, and then, as I said, played this past year with the Patriots. He played in just 10 games this year and started 6 of them, so it was clear that he was not at the same level he had been in earlier years. This was a guy I advocated the Steelers for signing in last offseason. I don't know if you remember that, Austin, but this was after Hightower signed with the Patriots, and it's just like, man, they're going to take every player the Steelers should have looked at.
I do remember this. I do remember this vividly because we were both upset that the Steelers didn't make a run at him, and everyone let the Patriots have whoever they wanted.
Yep. Didn't seem like it was that big of a deal in the end, though. Jacksonville Jaguars extended the contracts of head coach Doug Marrone, general manager Dave Caldwell, executive vice president Tom Coughlin, and they also extended Blake Bortles. I couldn't remember if we talked about that or not.
Oh my God, we didn't. It was 3 years, $54 million for those at home.
I have no thoughts on the matter.
I'm just confused. I think that the Jaguars still have that 4-12 mentality that they just had like a year or 2 years ago. They're not ready to be a competitor yet. I mean, obviously they were a competitor, but I think this was a one-year experiment, and I have a funny feeling that the Jaguars are going to come crashing down like the Broncos did just 2 seasons ago. I have a funny feeling about them.
Wait a minute. Nope, the Steelers still haven't made a negative play against the Jaguars yet. Still haven't. Okay. I'm not. I have nothing else to say about the Jaguars until the Steelers do something about it. They play again next year, so that's all I'm gonna say. The Rams, we got some more Rams news to get to. We have even more after this little bit, but sounds like they're planning on releasing or trading Tavon Austin, the former, I guess, receiver, running back, if you will. Should the Steelers sign him?
Trading for him.
Should the Steelers try to acquire him?
No. He's so trash. He's left so many punts. His definitely not trade for him. He has an $8 million contract, which is way too much for him. I remember seeing him get it, and I'm like, well, I guess anyone can get a contract nowadays. But he's not good as a returner anymore. I mean, he was only really good as a returner for maybe 1 or 2 years. It's just no. I think he should be basically done in the league. He didn't really do much at all this year.
Yeah, no, he got replaced by Farrell Cooper, who fumbled like 5 times in that one playoff game, and he still didn't play. So no, not at all. On to the next one. So a bit of sad news here. It was announced Wednesday, that Hall of Fame quarterback Jim Kelly, formerly of the Buffalo Bills, has once again been diagnosed with cancer. Jim Kelly was previously diagnosed in 2013, and he had 3 separate operations and was eventually declared cancer-free in 2016. And obviously, we're all hoping for the best for him. He will be having another operation on his jaw in the upcoming month, I believe. So wishing the best for Jim Kelly, a fantastic human being. Also a native of Western Pennsylvania, too. So just one of the really great guys in the sport, and I hope he'll be okay.
I agree. I hope he makes it through it. Sucks.
Yeah, cancer does suck. So the last thing we wanted to get through before we wrap things up tonight, it actually just occurred a few hours ago. You want to talk about it, Austin, since you were the one that put it in here? Sure,
no problem. Robert Quinn and a 6th-round pick was traded to the Miami Dolphins for a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick. So basically, for Robert Quinn, they get to move up in the 6th round and get a 4th-round pick. I think it was a good trade. Do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, not really much else to say. It's a good for them for moving up. I don't remember much about how Quinn played last year. I thought he was a pretty good player, though.
He's just so expensive and spent a lot of the time on the injury report. He was injured often. He's a good player when he plays, but he's injured and he costs a lot. So that's why a lot of people are saying, wow, the Rams got fleeced. I personally don't think the Rams got fleeced. I think that the Miami Dolphins gave up. This is a fair trade because of how much Quinn costs and how his injuries have affected him.
Well, here's how I see it. The Rams have a great front 7 and have a great defensive front. They don't need him when he's that injured and costs that much. And it just fits the Dolphins to pick up a big contract like that.
Yeah, I feel that.
So we'll see, but I think it makes too much sense. So I think that's a good move for both teams. So we'll see how that goes. So unless we have anything else to say, that finishes things for the day.
Nope, that should be good.
All right, it was good to get back into it. Just a reminder, we went over specialists and the quarterback position. Up next, we'll be looking at interior offensive linemen. That means guards and centers. So prepare yourselves for that. Got a few more of these positions to get through before we get into the interesting ones, so bear with us here. But we have started, and the draft is just under 2 months away. So be excited, and Austin's going to be visiting me soon for our spring break, so it's another reason to get excited. We'll do an episode live in person. So looking forward to that, Austin. You'll be here next Friday, so a week from today.
Yeah, boy.
All right, let's see if we can get one or two more of these in until then, so that way we can talk about something interesting instead of maybe linemen. No offense to linemen. I love linemen because, I used to play linemen, but I think there's a lot more interesting things to talk about with a position the Steelers need more, like, maybe a defensive line or wide receiver or something. We'll see what happens. But for the time being, thank you so much for joining us today on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions you want to ask us about the Steelers or the show, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find all of that on our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. We also post our videos on SoundCloud and YouTube, and we're also on the iTunes app, the podcast app on iTunes. So you can also check us out there under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today, Austin, and looking forward to being able to look ahead to the draft again. It's not the most exciting time, but it's better than no football, let's put it that way.
Yep, definitely something better, and it makes it interesting when the draft comes by. We're thankful because we get to see what other players we looked at and see where they actually know a few things about them. So
definitely a good time of the year. So training camp will be here before we know it. But until then, thank you so much for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.